So, what's going on, guys? Thosanicus here from Lush Gaming. I have had a Ryzen 5 2400G for quite a few months now. I haven't really messed around with it a whole lot. It's a small form factor. I put it inside of an original Xbox, actually. Kind of looks like crap. I'll grab it here, show you guys. I'm going to do a little bit of overclocking with it today just to see, is it really worth trying to buy an APU? I mean, it's June 16th of 2019. That thing cost me $800. Would it be worth it for somebody? I don't know. Let's find out. Okay, so this is the Ryzen Xbox. Big fan right up front there. I mean, everybody's going to give me a little flack for kind of cutting off the center Xbox piece here. It's my first try. I'm hoping to eventually move this into an Xbox 360 chassis. Just get it open here. So, there I am. Now that this thing is open, take a look-see. It's a Strix B450 mini ITX motherboard. I got two 8 sticks of G-Skill DDR4 3200 megahertz RAM with the Samsung B die, and then right here is I used a Corsair small form factor 450 watt fully modular power supply. And thankfully I was able, I don't know if you can see that at all, there was a pinout header adapter or whatever that came with the motherboard, so I was able to use the stock power button on the Xbox. So that was really friendly. Besides all that, I have a 1 terabyte M.2 NVMe in this as well. I figured that would be it was only $120. Anybody, if you have a Micro Center near you, please go to Micro Center, because $120 is a 1 terabyte M.2 NVMe. That's where I buy all my hardware. I love them. I'm never gonna not buy anything from them. So with that being said, every game that I have ran these tests on, I played in 1080p, medium settings. Most of the time ambient occlusion and anti-aliasing are turned off. I am playing on a Acer something or other 144 Hz FreeSync monitor, so FreeSync is enabled. Other than that, I'll add it at the end of the video. Okay, the first game I decided to play was Mordhau. It's really popular nowadays, or it's becoming more popular, I should say. The first I ran through all these games with the stock clock speed, just to, kind of get a baseline. And if you take a little look here, blue is the stock speed, red is the overclock speed. Going to the Mordhau tab, my first run through, I usually got the average frames per second was between 25 and 30. I think it was right around 24 to 25 and a half or something like that was my average frames per second. Moving down to Borderlands 2. That game was a AAA title. It is a couple years old now. Doesn't exactly require the same amount of hardware. It's not very taxing. I got, pretty high frames for average, just over 60, almost 70 in some cases as well. The overclock, after I applied that, I don't know if it was just because of the engine, or I don't know what the exact deal was. I still need to do some fine-tuning on this overclock. That dropped me down in frames, actually. I was really kind of surprised. The third game I played was The Witcher 3 here. That game is hard. It's hard on hardware. hard on hardware. That average frames per second on the stock speed was higher, once again, than the overclock, but it was low, man. It was like 22 frames a second right there, and then after I applied the overclock, it was only like 19 frames. Just didn't really look that good, and I'm not, once again, I'm not really sure why that is. I don't know if it's the engine. I don't know exactly. The next game I played, Doom. I played Doom in the Vulkan API. That's the only way anybody should ever play Doom, is in the Vulkan API. I don't use OpenGL. Runs like crap compared to Vulkan. Okay, compared to Vulkan, OpenGL runs like crap. Now, that was pretty good. The average frames I got was between 41 to 45. I was hovering right around 44. Not bad, actually, for 1080p. It looked all right. It ran smooth. No big deal. Once I applied the overclock, the overclock, it was a bit of an increase. It wasn't, below my mind increase, but 5 frames on average. And then the last and final game I played, Grand Theft Auto 5, another AAA title, another game that's a couple years old. The average frames per second is about 50 and a half, 56. I take that back. It was about 55, 56, not 50 and a half. 55, 56 looked good. Well, actually, I take that back. It looked like shit. If anybody has played Grand Theft Auto 5 on the PS3 or the Xbox 360, that's about what it looked like. Not real great, honestly, but the frames were there. Couldn't totally complain. After the overclock, kind of the same deal as Doom. Not a huge increase, just slight 2 to 3 frame increase on that guy. Now, onto the fan curve, I suppose. So onto the temps here. The biggest thing that I have to say is when I first did the run playthrough on stock speed, I did not have a custom fan curve. I kind of messed up a little bit. I ended up setting a fan curve after I did the overclock. That might be where some of the frame loss or gain might come from, as well as if you're looking at these temperatures, they all went down, so that's good. I mean, that's just a big thing to have right there, is just having a lower temp in general. So starting off with Mordhau, as you can see, I started with 64 degrees. All of these are measured in Celsius. So I started off with 64 degrees Celsius was my max temp, and then that actually dropped down to 56 on, I'm sorry, 67. The max temp was 67, and then it dropped down to 65. I was looking at Borderlands 2. So Borderlands 2, Mordhau, end of the point, Mordhau, not a huge drop for temperature. Borderlands 2 was what I was originally talking about. That was where I really got a big drop. I was fairly impressed. I went from 64 down to 56. Into The Witcher 3, my max temp was 66 degrees. After the overclock, it dropped to 58. None of these are bad temps by any means. Onto Doom, the max was 73, and then after the overclock, it dropped to 66. And keep in mind, that's the max temperature. And then Grand Theft Auto 5 was another pretty big one. That max temp was 68, and then that actually dropped down to 56 as well. Excuse me. Like I was saying, none of these are bad temps to have at all. It's just a matter of maybe that was part of my problem, was the CPU was thermally limiting itself, or like the graphics. I don't know what it was exactly. It's I don't know for sure. So all in all, looking at this data, could it have been my fan curve that could have helped out and higher overclock? I ended up reaching 1463 for the graphics overclock at a voltage of 1.25. The SoC was also overclocked to 1.25. I used Ryzen Master Utility the whole time. The CPU was set to the voltage of 1.45. I don't know. It's tough to say. This is a very finicky processor. I really have not had any trouble overclocking any other processor besides this one. Maybe it's just the aspect of it having a built-in graphics card. That 2 gigabytes of video RAM that go along with it might be throwing it off. It might even be a matter of my RAM as well. I had set my RAM at a stock speed of 3200 megahertz at 1.4 volts. Maybe I'll try to drop it down to 2933 with a fluctuating voltage. It's tough to say, really. I mean, anything could get me or you, anything could get me or you different results. It just depends on really how much time and effort you really want to put into it at the end of the day. With that being said, like I said at the beginning of the video, that thing cost me $850. $850 nowadays? You could go get yourself a Ryzen 5 1600. 6-core 12-thread processor. You could buy like an RX 580 graphics card, or even a GTX 1060. If you could get one for $120, $150, that'd be a solid graphics card. Price for performance, $850 ain't really worth it. But that's just me. That's what I spent. I mean, if you guys are looking for a used PC, that's not a bad deal either. I did not really think it's going to be worth it to overclock this thing. I think it would be more worth it to use the Radeon Wattman settings, if it's possible. I actually didn't look into it at all, so I know the Ryzen Master Utility has a game mode preset. I'd never used it. I don't know if it would make a difference or if it would hurt it even more, but just from my results here today, I don't really think that it was that much of an increase to make it worth it. I know for sure, whether I lose the overclock and go back to stock speeds or leave the overclock, it's a stable overclock. Like I said, it's like 1463. Stock speeds, I believe, are around 11 or 1200. I know for sure one thing is I'm going to leave that fan curve. That custom fan curve helped out a lot. There's not a lot of moving parts in that case, as you could see. I mean, the only thing that moves is the fan on the power supply, which it's an 80 plus gold rated power supply, so I never draw more than, say, 150 watts, so it's always in silent mode. The power supply fan never needs to turn on. Otherwise, it's just the processor fan. I've debated getting a 120 mil fan and screwing it into the top of the case to add more air pressure going inside of the case, seeing if that would change anything. But, you know, with the M.2 NVMe drive, nothing moves inside of there. I don't know. It pretty much just sits on my entertainment stand all the time anyways. It's just, I was looking for it to see if it would be worth it to have something like this. You know, everybody's always about, oh, PC versus consoles and this and that, this and that. I mean, if you want to buy an Xbox, that's your deal, man. You go for it. If you want to buy a PC, this is not a bad, it's not a bad entry PC. Like I said, you could probably get a 2200G or a 2400G used APU. Throw something like that. If you can handle having not the highest resolution, I mean, the frames, just in these 5 games that I played, everything was playable with the exception of The Witcher 3. If you're not really, if you're okay with, like I said, if you're okay with playing on a lower resolution, it'll kind of look like shit. If you could handle playing 720p, I bet this thing could play 720p high settings, no problem. So, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to like it or dislike it. If you hate me, that's cool. I just like to drink grain belt. Otherwise, feel free to show your friends and let me know what you think down in the bottom.